Hi, welcome to a tutorial using FlutterFlow, which we are doing on the hobby. Now, in this tutorial, we are going to be covering a fun topic called dynamic form fields. Now, what are dynamic form fields? What do you want to achieve, right? So, our objective of this tutorial is, let's say we have a form field or a set of form fields where we want to gather, let's say, uh, users let's say social media handles, right? So let's say we give them two handles. One is, let's say, the title. The second is the URL to their Facebook page or GitHub page or Twitter page or Instagram handle, anything of that sort, right? So we want to be able to allow our users to input multiple values, but we really do not know how many values that each user might need. Somebody might need maybe just two. Somebody might need 10 if they maintain 10 different social media accounts, or they want to publish 10 different URLs in the profile, right? So one way of achieving this is through something called dynamic form fields, where you create a set of fields which, on a press of a button, is going to keep repeating itself and is going to automatically increase the size of your form, right? So now this is something that is can look very complex, but it's something very simple. Flutterflow makes it very simple, and with a bit of a quick custom function, a very small one, you would be able to achieve repeating these form fields in a jiffy, right? So that's what we're going to see in this and cover in this tutorial. So let's dive into the way things work, right? Let me quickly close the cover. I was just designing for the blog post, right? So just to give you a heads up, I've already did the setup on two different occasions. I mean, two different set of fields, which I am actually using in my application, and I'm going to quickly show you what is the fundamental difference between these two, and why you should do it the right way, which is not going to cause you the error. What kind of errors that you can kind of foresee in this, right? So this is my first set of field where I have something called the link title, and where I have the URL, and I basically have an add button, which on press of the add button is going to keep adding these fields. So I am able to add more and more links, right? The second set of dynamic form fields that I have set up on the same page is for the project portfolio information, which is inside, let's say, an expandable, where you're seeing the project title, you're seeing something like a description, and this is like a gallery of images where you can upload multiple images, right? So again, on the press of the add, you are seeing that the project portfolio information is repeating again and again, right? There you go. So I'm able to even remove it and get it back to number one. Now, there is a very small difference between each one, these two set of form fields. So let me quickly show you so that you kind of understand why we wanted to do this tutorial to even begin with. So number one is, let's say I'm going to type a project title. Let's say I'm going to call this project A, right? So, and I'm going to say some description. This is description for project A. Okay, let me skip the images for now, and I'm going to add one more project. The moment I'm going to go inside, I am seeing, hey, project A is appearing here, and the description for project A is appearing here. Okay, might be some stray error, so I want to delete and make it project B, and I see that even the top form field has become project B, right? So this is not what we want. We want unique information. We don't want the same information getting populated again and again, creating 10 different records in our database, right? That is not what we actually have to what want to achieve. So let's take a look at this link text. I have not connected the remove button. I was just quickly testing it. I just set it up right now. I don't think I set up the ring button. Yeah, I have not set up the remove button. So in this, we are going to say, let's say, type link one, right? So you see, I am able to type something unique in each one of them, where which is not coming down to, which is not repeating, which is not duplicating itself, but it is actually creating unique set of values. So how do I achieve this? So this is something that uh, quite a lot of people who are starting out, they struggle. And I have been seeing repeated queries. I have received multiple personal messages over even the Discord channel, and even in the community, where people message me asking me, hey, this is repeating, what should I do? So here is how you can achieve this whole effect and get it working right at the very first attempt. So let's dive in. So this is my setup right here. Let it quickly load. Okay. For some reason my project is super slow. I should have used a demo project, but I'm actually showing you on the updates that I'm doing on the hobby portal. Right. So So what I have as the setup here, the first thing that you have to understand is what is the logic behind of how you can actually achieve this repeatable. So there could be multiple ways of how you could do this, but I have followed one methodology which kind of seemed to work for me, and this is very, very simple for me to replicate. So I kind of use this in multiple places of my project, which you could as well follow. There is no right or wrong way when it comes to programming. It's just the way things can work. If it can work, if it can fit into your project, if it can deliver you results, that is the best way. That is the best way, right? So there is no second thoughts about that. So what I'm doing now is, first and foremost thing, I have a list. Okay, so I have a list view, and inside the list view, I'm basically creating these two form fields, right? And outside of the list view, I basically have this row where I have two text. One is add, remove, and the other one is add, right? So now what I have is this list view is by default set to iterate over a list which is generating from a children, which I am populating from a local state variable called pro module URL count. Now what is this local state variable? What have I set it up as? So when I if I go to my local state variable, let me just quickly show you. For some reason my system is super slow, the project size is big. Oops. I really should have done it in a test project to show the demo case. It's okay. Right. So this is the local state variable that I'm using, where I have set the type as an integer, which is a list, right? So, and what I do is this list, the moment I create it, I set a default value where in item one, I'm going to add a value zero, right? So, or you can call it one, you can call it zero, you can call it whatever you want. So I have called it zero. Item one has a value zero, right? So now what happens is, when I create this local state variable and I set the default value, my list is going to repeat for the number of items in this list. My list view, where with the form fields, is going to repeat for the number of items in this list. So which is going to be just one at the default state, right? So when I create when I come to the page new, remember, I have not set it to persistence. If I set it to persist, it is going to remember the value if I don't clear it, and you're going to see multiple form fields populated right when you come into the page. That is not what you want, right? So the let me just quickly refresh this page. So when I refresh this page, you're going to basically see only one form field which is set as an initial value, right? So you're just seeing one form field which is set as an initial value, which is what we wanted, because our local state variable contains only one value of zero, right? Now, what are we doing now? So on press of the add button, we are going to use a custom function to populate one more value into our list, So the number of items in our list basically becomes 2. So I'm going to add this is kind of embarrassing today. I really really apologies for this. I think even FlutterFlow people have to consider upgrading or finding out a way how they can start supporting slightly larger projects where the experience is a bit more faster. It's not that slow. Otherwise, it takes. It's a beautiful product, but it takes sometimes it can take forever for it to load, or sometimes it can get stuck, and you just lose the focus. You just lose the rhythm of what you're doing. So, hmm, please, 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 please. Ah, finally. So, so I have basically set up, as I was saying, I have basically set up a custom function, which is going to add new values into the list as I populate, as I click add button, right? So what I'm doing is on the press of add, I'm going to update the which I will show you the action as well. So I have this custom function called the form field repeater, where the output, the return from the function is actually an integer value. Oops. Yeah, so the return type from the function is actually an integer value, and the function arguments that I'm giving is actually the list of integers, which is basically coming from my local state variable, right? So this is configured as a list. So when you go into my custom function, what I have in my custom function is just one statement. It's just one statement, right? So what I'm returning is I am saying form field count list, which is basically the list itself, and I am saying list dot last. So because it was zero initially, so my list dot last is going to be having a value of 0, and I am adding plus 1 to it, right? So if my list of last is going to be 1, I'm going to add plus 1, and it is going to become 2, right? So the moment I say that you are going to return this value, so what it say does is it is going to read my list. My list is currently in the initial state is having only one value of 0, so this is going to add 1. So my return is basically going to be, so let's just quickly test it. So my initial state, my list is 0. So if I'm going to say run, it has to return back me a value of 1, right? So there you go. You see, it returns back me the value of 1. Now I'm going to add one more item to the list, and I'm going to call this 1, right? So the moment I run, it has to return back, reading this 1, it has to return me the return back the value 2. There you go. It returns me the value 2, right? So this is what I am using to populate a custom action, right? So or to populate an action on press of the add button. So when I go to the, let me just quickly grab the page. So when I go to the add button, I have an action right here, which is updating the local state. I wish there was a way of how I could, just select this portion and make it bigger. Maybe I'll use a snipping tool. Damn, why? Ah, okay, there you go. So maybe you are able to see it better, I don't know. Anyway, so what we have is I am updating the local state with, and the field to update is exactly the same list of integers that we had, and we are now saying the action has to add the item to the list. And what item to add? We are choosing that from the variable. And what is our variable? Our variable is going to be our custom function, right? And in the custom function, my input to the custom function was the list itself back again. So I am going to feed in the list of integers yet again from the local state variable. So this can sound confusing, but let me try to explain to you back again, right? So let me just quickly grab a text editor or something which I can. So our initial list, let us say, I don't know if you are able to see, or maybe I'll just quickly grab a Word document which can show you things in a bigger picture. Okay, so let me make the font size 26. So let's say our initial list contains a value of contains a value 0, right? Just excuse me on the, yeah, which because of the font it's curling, so I thought it was an error. So that's fine. Okay. So our initial list is basically something which looks like this. Let me make it slightly more bigger. Okay. So our initial list looks something like this. So now what our function did is on first run, or when I click add, our function returns value 1 because we have item 0. So our function is returning a value 1, right? Perfect. So now what we do is we have an add action, and we are updating a local state variable, which is this initial list again. Okay, so we are going to update this list. And what are we action we are going to do? We are going to add to the list what the function returns, which is basically the value of 1. Function return value, which is basically nothing but 1, right? Perfect. So to do this, what we are doing is the input to the function is again the initial list itself. Okay, so we are going to input. So technically what our function does is it is going to take an input of 0. It is going to read this list. It is going to calculate the 0 plus 1. It is going to add, which is the value 1, and it is going to, the custom action that we are setting is going to add to list this value of 1. So our new list looks like 0 comma 1. So by the end of the action, once the action computes, okay, so once the action computes one time, when you press the button one time, our new list looks like this. So when you press it two times, it's going to look something like this, right? So our list is set to repeat for this list of integers. So how many ever values are present in the list, it is going to repeat for so many values. That is it, right? So when we do this, we are able to see and achieve the result of clicking add and adding multiple repeatable form fields. Now, the second part of the story is, hey, we are doing the same thing on the bottom portfolio project information, which is actually duplicating the content. but the link title and URL, which is also following the same logic, is not doing so. So to make sure that it is not duplicating values on across all the form fields, all we have to do is make these two form fields into a component, right? So what you can actually do is anything that needs to be made into a component, you can basically click it, and you can do a right click, and you can say convert to component, right? So when you say convert to component and then you put it inside the list, it is not going to repeat the values, it's not going to duplicate the form fields, it's going to have unique values, because it's going to treat it as separate components, right? So that is it for part one. Maybe in part two, because it's getting slightly longer, maybe in part two I'll do another quick video of how you can basically remove from the list. Maybe a third one where it gets slightly tricky, where we have to capture all these values and push it into the database in one action, right? So that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next one. Have a nice day.